10-game slate on a Wednesday evening around the association, a night of returns and reunions as well. We start in Portland, where Damian Lillard, after 10 years in the Rose City, back as a member of the Milwaukee Bucks. But it did not go the way of Milwaukee. So many things playing up into the atmosphere last night back in Portland for Dame. His return for the first time against the Trailblazers, game number 2 with Doc Rivers as the head coach of this Milwaukee organization, looking for their first win under Doc Rivers, booked as an 11-point road favorite. It should have been easy. It should have been a night of celebration. It should have been a night of coronation for Damian Lillard. It was not. 25 points under his points prop of 26.5. 3 of 13 from 3, and the Blazers pull off the outright upset, winning by 3, 119-116 as an 11-point home underdog.
Yeah, you always want to go back to the arena that you played over a decade in and be that conquering hero, coming back with a much better basketball team and giving a wave to the fans. What a great night it is. Dame scored 38 points. The Bucks won going away, and it was a great homecoming. Not necessarily the case here for Damian Lillard. Now, he didn't play a bad basketball game, Ben. He was just inefficient in that game, 9 of 23 from the floor, but he did chip in with 6 rebounds and 7 assists. That should have been good enough for the victory here. Because quite frankly, you take a look at Dame Lillard, had a +6 on the night. So did Giannis Antetokounmpo. And each one of the starting lineup here for the Milwaukee Bucks was a plus. And they still end up losing to a Portland Trailblazers team that had no business beating the Milwaukee Bucks here. Not a great start for the Doc Rivers era in Milwaukee, but I was surprised waking up to see that final score. Because even though the first thing I checked was the box score and how much Lillard scored, and I was like, oh no, I needed one more bucket to cash in that ticket. And then I checked the final score. I'm like, now hold on. You're telling me Dame Lillard went back, didn't play all that well, and the Bucks lost in that basketball game? Because what I was probably hoping this year, thinking I was going to see, was Giannis Antetokounmpo, 43 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, and away they went. That's a good win for Portland. Why? Because Portland was actually down 1 point with under a minute to go in that game and made the clutch buckets and great defensive plays in order to lift them to a victory. I'm still surprised, though, that Milwaukee, forget about even covering the spread, losing outright to the Trailblazers. I didn't see that coming.
There was a moment late in the game where Dame inbounded the ball to Giannis, who was immediately fouled, obviously, missed both of his attempts from the charity stripe, and Portland was able to hang on. The Blazers win outright as an 11-point home underdog. The other reunion last night, Kevin Durant back in Brooklyn against the Nets. That one went better for the returning star against his former team. 3-point number in favor of the Suns. They win big. KD leads all scorers with 33 points. Also had 8 dimes. A big victory for the Suns, who have now won 9 of their last 11 games with a win last night inside the Barclays Center.
Yeah, I got to lay off taking the Nets at home, getting the points. And maybe I could have used a little Ben Simmons action last night. But, of course, he played his one game for the season, and we might see him in another few weeks when he can play decent again. But that's a nice win for the Phoenix Suns, a 16-point win coming back into Brooklyn for Kevin Durant. He certainly put on a display much more efficient than we saw at Damian Lillard. 10 of 16 from the floor, 11 of 12 from the free throw line. Team leading 33 points in that game. Nurkic chipped in with a nice 28-point spot here. Bradley Beal played 37 minutes, only got to the 12 points. So when you have at least one guy in the big three stepping up on a night-to-night basis, you got a great shot at winning games. That's a big-time victory for the Phoenix Suns, not only winning that basketball game, but covering in style there.
And they have not been a great cover team this year. Now they have covered in their last 3 victories. The Suns, 8 games above 500, 28-20 straight up, a 7-1 price to win the NBA's Western Conference crown. I will say that is a very intriguing number to me, but still, Phoenix sits in the 6th spot in the Western Conference standings behind the Kings, the Nuggets, the Clippers, and the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are also a game behind the Minnesota Timberwolves. A huge game last night, though, in OKC for the second consecutive game for the Thunder at home, taking on a team atop the Western Conference. Earlier this week, it was the Minnesota Timberwolves. The T-Wolves go on the road. They win as a 2.5-point underdog outright. They take over the top spot by themselves in the Western Conference. Entering last night, OKC was 32-15, a half game behind the Denver Nuggets, who were 33-15. The Thunder ended up being booked as a 6.5-point home favorite because no Nikola Jokic last night for the Denver Nuggets, and OKC gets a big 5 9-point victory. The Nuggets only an underdog for the 6th time last night. They do cover, only losing by 5. But in terms of making marquee statements at the top of the Western Conference, the Thunder get a big one last night at home.
I thought the Thunder would win that game. And also, if you're watching the early line, we're thinking Jokic was still going to possibly play in that game. That number was 1-2 points in that range. Got up to 6.5. So technically, you covered if you took the late number once Jokic came out for the Denver Nuggets. But the two things I expected last night, which is basically what I expect on a night-to-night basis from OKC. That was OKC to win that basketball game and Gilgeous-Alexander to drop over 30 points, which he did here.
Yeah.
That's a great win. We talked about it yesterday. The handicap overall, Jokic or no Jokic, and he ends up not playing. But you want to file these games away because when you get to a playoff scenario, you don't ever want to go in and be like, well, we played them 4 times during the year. We had a better record overall, but they beat us all 4 times. You got to get these wins that you can draw back to when you get to the playoffs. And, hey, guys, we played this team before. We've beat this team before. I don't care if Jokic was on the court or not. It's just nice to get the victory against that team. I thought OKC would get the job done, and they did last night.
Denver has already played 49 games this year. They now technically have the 4th best winning percentage in the Western Conference, but there's a couple of game disparities throughout the Western Conference standings. The Timberwolves, the best record, 34-14, a full game up on the Oklahoma City Thunder. Minnesota, a big victory at home last night, 121-87 against the Luka Doncic-less Dallas Mavericks. So a big win for the T-Wolves. Behind Minnesota and OKC, slightly in front of Denver, the LA Clippers. So as we look at the Western Conference standings and correlate them to the Western Conference odds, the Nuggets, the favorites, plus 180. Or plus 175 now, plus 320 for the LA Clippers. And again, that's 7-1 number on Phoenix. But the two teams at the top that with the updated numbers, plus 950 for OKC, same exact price with plus 950 with Minnesota on the other side. That will be the thing that we monitor throughout the home stretch of this NBA season. What do the numbers look like? The odds outright to win the Western Conference for those teams on the up and up, Minnesota and Oklahoma City.
Yeah, and it would be interesting to play out, as we said, because, again, the regular season doesn't necessarily that success equate into a playoff championship or a deep playoff run. You take a look at the Denver Nuggets as the favorites, technically 1.5 games back in the Western Conference, but been there, done that. If they show up to the playoffs and healthy, you're going to give them a legitimate chance to take it down. The other teams that are actually ahead of them in the standings, right? The Minnesota Timberwolves, really good regular season basketball team. How's that going to translate into the playoffs? A younger basketball team in the Oklahoma City Thunder. Very good regular season so far. How does that translate into the playoffs? And then the other teams we take a look at, such as the Phoenix Suns and also the Clippers, in that same boat. Not saying that they're not equals and they can both win a championship, but teams trying to blend together. James Harden, new to the crew. How's it going to play out? Will they be healthy in the playoffs? And that's the same thing with the Phoenix Suns, adding Bradley Beal here to the equation with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. So a lot of fun things to talk about in the Western Conference. We're just going to wait to see, once the playoffs gets here, who's actually for real. But from those numbers, we already know the Nuggets are for real. We're waiting to see how the other teams react, and also, once they get to the playoffs, how they turn out.
The Kings, a 23-1 price. Of course, Sacramento was the 3 seed in the Western Conference postseason a year ago. Sacramento on the road last night in South Beach against a streaking Heat team, but in a negative way. Miami entered riding a 7-game losing skid. That streak is now snapped. 9-point victory for Miami at home over Sacramento, 115-106. The Heat cover as a 2-point home favorite.
Yeah, Fox and Barnes didn't show up in this game here on the road for the Sacramento Kings. Barnes goes 4 of 13 from the floor, but 0 for 6 from three-point range. Fox, 4 for 16 from the floor, 1 for 8 from three-point range. Talked about at the start of the show, 19, 17, and 13 from Sabonis. Just wasn't enough here, but finally, the Miami Heat get a victory and on their home court. Jimmy Butler shows up with 31 points. That's what you needed, and maybe they can sort of take that exhale, like, okay, we got that win. The streak is stopped. Let's put some wins together before the All-Star break, and let's get that good mojo back for the second half.
As we keep it moving around the association of Minneapolis, we go, the best team in the Western Conference. The Timberwolves were booked as a 13-point home favorite last night in the Twin Cities against the Dallas Mavericks. Why such a large number? No Luka Doncic for Dallas. No Kyrie Irving for the Mavericks either. So Minnesota covers as a 13-point home favorite, 121-87 over the Mavs. Again, the Timberwolves, the best record in the Western Conference, 34-14, and they have held serve on their home floor, 18-4 straight up now in the Twin Cities.
Yeah, the smart way to bet this game would have been taking the Dallas Mavericks in the first half as they're only down 4 points at the break. But when you don't have your superstars that you can rely on, the longer the game goes on, the other team tends to take over. And as we know, the Minnesota Timberwolves, maybe the best defensive basketball team in the NBA, won the third quarter by 9 points and the fourth quarter by 21 points, easily pulling away to cover that double-digit number. That's what you're supposed to do when you're a good basketball team. On your home court, the other team's injured, take care of them, and they did.
And Anthony Edwards only had 9 points, but Minnesota now 17-17-2 against the spread as the favored side. The number 1 overall pick from the 2022 NBA draft faced off against the number 1 overall pick from the 2023 NBA draft last night in San Antonio. Paolo Banchero led his Orlando Magic with 25 points and led his Orlando Magic to a 10-point road victory, 108-98 in San Antonio, despite 21 points on the other side for Victor Wembanyama. The Magic cover as a 5.5-point road favorite, DRS, in San Antonio. Orlando now 11-4 against the spread as a favorite. The Magic overall best cover team in the association.